My name is Juliana Cooper Williams. I was 29 years old when I learned that becoming a mother doesn't soften everyone. Sometimes it exposes exactly who they've always been. 2 months earlier, I had given birth to my daughter Sophie. 7 pounds, perfect lungs, and eyes the exact shade of hazel my father used to brag came from his side of the family. The kind of eyes that made strangers stop me in grocery stores. The kind that made sleepless nights feel worth it. I thought having a baby would bring my family closer. I thought it would heal old cracks. I was wrong. "Juliana, honey, your dad's on his way over." My husband Brandon stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching me wrestle Sophie into yet another clean onesie. The diaper change before this one had lasted exactly 8 minutes. "That's the 3rd visit this week," I said quietly, snapping the final button. Brandon hesitated. "He said he's bringing Kate." My hands froze. Kate, my father's girlfriend of 7 months. The woman who showed up drunk to my baby shower and knocked over an entire dessert table before laughing like it was charming. The same woman who once called me at 2 a.m, slurring about how my dad saved her from a meaningless life. "I don't know about this," I said. "I know," Brandon replied gently, "but he's your dad. Maybe she's having a better day." I didn't answer. I just lifted Sophie against my chest and felt her warm weight ground me. An hour later, the doorbell rang. The smell hit me before I even fully opened the door. Sharp vodka layered under cheap floral perfume. My father, David Cooper, stood there grinning, his arm wrapped around Kate like a trophy. She leaned into him, unsteady, her lipstick slightly smeared. "There's my beautiful daughter," he said, pulling me into a hug. "And where's my grandbaby?" "She's sleeping," I said. "Maybe you could come back tomorrow." "Nonsense," he interrupted. "I drove all the way here. Kate's been dying to meet little Sophie." Kate lurched forward, her words melting together. "I love babies. Let me hold her, Juliana. I'm great with babies." I stepped back, blocking the doorway. "Kate, you've been drinking." "Just a little wine with lunch," my dad snapped, his smile tightening. "Don't be dramatic." "I can smell vodka from here," I said calmly. "I'm not comfortable with you holding her." Kate's face twisted. "You think you're better than me?" "I didn't say that. I'm just protecting my baby." "She's not even her grandmother," I added quietly. The air shifted. "What did you say?" my dad asked, his voice dropping to something cold and unfamiliar. Brandon appeared beside me, his hand settling protectively against my lower back. "David, it's probably best if you come back another day." "Stay out of this," my dad snapped. "This is between me and my daughter. I'm not letting a drunk person hold my 2-month-old, I said. "That's not negotiable." Kate suddenly lunged toward the hallway. "I'll just get her myself then." I stepped in front of her, heart pounding. "You're not going near my daughter." "How dare you!" she shrieked. "David, are you going to let her talk to me like this?" My father's face turned red. Veins stood out along his forehead. "Apologize," he demanded, "right now." "No." The word was calm, solid, final. "You ungrateful little..." He grabbed one of the dining chairs, the oak one he'd given us as a housewarming gift, and raised it above his head. "David, don't!" Brandon shouted. Everything slowed. I turned just as the chair left his hands. Pain exploded across my shoulder and back as it slammed into me, knocking me into the wall. White hot, blinding. I gasped, my legs giving out. "Oh my God, Juliana!" Brandon rushed to me. My father stood frozen, chest heaving. Kate giggled behind him. "That's what she gets," she said. "Should have just let me hold the baby." Sophie started crying from the nursery. "Get out," I whispered, clutching my shoulder. "Get out of my house." They left, and as my baby cried in Brandon's arms, I sat there shaking, wondering how the man who once taught me to ride a bike had just thrown a chair at his own daughter. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the impact again. The violent jolt, the crack of wood against bone, the way the air had been knocked out of my lungs. Worse than the pain was the sound of Sophie crying from the nursery afterward. Sharp, terrified, confused. a sound that still made my chest tighten hours later. Morning light crept through the bedroom blinds, and that was when I realized something was wrong. I couldn't lift my arm. Even the smallest movement sent a deep, pulsing ache through my shoulder and down my spine. When I rolled slightly toward the mirror, my breath caught. A massive bruise spread across my upper back and shoulder, angry purple at the center, fading into sickly greens and yellows along the edges. My skin looked like it had been struck by something heavy, because it had. Brandon came in quietly, Sophie cradled against his chest. He froze when he saw me sitting up, staring at my reflection. "Oh my God," he whispered. He set Sophie gently in her bassinet and crossed the room in 3 long strides. "That looks worse than last night." "I can't move my arm," I said, my voice flat with disbelief. His jaw tightened. "I'm calling the police." "No," I said quickly, too quickly. "Not yet." He looked at me like I'd just suggested something insane. "Juliana, he threw a chair at you. What if Sophie had been in your arms?" That thought twisted violently in my stomach. I swallowed hard. "I know," I whispered. I need a minute." Brandon had taken photos the night before. Close-ups, wide angles, timestamps. He'd insisted, even while I was shaking and insisting my dad hadn't meant it. Now, looking at the evidence, denial felt impossible. My phone buzzed. "Mom?" I'd texted her after everything happened, but it had been late. I stared at her name for a long moment before answering. "Mom?" "Juliana," she said softly. "Tell me everything." I told her. Every word. My voice broke more than once. When I finished, there was silence on the line. "Your father called me this morning," she said finally. My chest tightened. "What did he say?" "That you attacked Kate verbally. That you were cruel. That when he tried to move a chair out of the way, it slipped." I laughed, one sharp, disbelieving sound. "That's not what happened. He lifted it over his head and threw it at me." "I believe you," she said immediately. "I divorced your father for a reason. His temper has always been there. Kate just feeds it." Tears burned my eyes. "What do I do?" "You document everything," she said. "And you press charges. He needs to face consequences. For once." After we hung up, I called my best friend Nicole. She arrived within 30 minutes. One look at my shoulder and her face went white. "That's assault," she said. "Clear, obvious, violent assault." "I know." "Have you called the police?" "Not yet." She grabbed my hands. "Juliana, what happens next time? What if Sophie is older and sees him treat you like that?" Brandon walked back in, his face tense. "Your dad's been texting me." I felt a flare of anger. "What's he saying?" He handed me his phone. "David, Brandon, this has gotten out of hand." "David, the chair slipped. I would never hurt my daughter." "David, Kate is devastated. She thinks Juliana hates her." "David, this is tearing me apart." "He's lying," I whispered. "He's already rewriting it." Nicole nodded, "Which is exactly why you need to file a police report today." "But people will believe him," I said quietly. "Let them," Brandon said. "We have photos. We were there." My phone buzzed again. "Aunt Patricia, Juliana, your father told me what happened. I think you owe Kate an apology." My hands shook as I typed back. "What Dad told you isn't accurate. He threw a chair at me because I wouldn't let his drunk girlfriend hold my baby." The reply came quickly. "That seems extreme. David would never intentionally hurt you. Maybe you misunderstood." I dropped my phone onto the couch. "I can't believe this," I said. "She's defending him." "Your father has always been good at playing the victim," Brandon said. "But you're not alone. What if he tells everyone I'm keeping Sophie away out of spite?" "You're keeping Sophie away because he's violent," Brandon replied. "That's called being a good mother." I looked at my daughter, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of the storm surrounding her. "Okay," I said finally. "Call the police." Nicole squeezed my hand. "I'll stay." The officer who came was calm, professional. He photographed my injuries himself, took our statements, nodded gravely when Brandon described the chair flying through the air. "This is serious," he said. Assault with witnesses. Later that afternoon, my phone rang again. My dad. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Juliana," he said, his voice heavy with false sadness. "I hear you're making this a big deal." "You threw a chair at me." "It slipped," he snapped. "You provoked me. You humiliated Kate." "I protected my baby." "She's my girlfriend," he said. "She's going to be part of this family, whether you like it or not." "Not after this," I said. "She's not." There was a pause. Then anger flooded his voice. "You always think you're better than everyone else, just like your mother." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but my resolve felt strangely solid. That night, as I watched Brandon rock Sophie to sleep, I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. My father wasn't sorry. He was angry he'd lost control of the story, and that meant this was far from over. The fallout came fast. It wasn't loud at first. No screaming phone calls, no dramatic confrontations, just messages. Quiet, carefully worded, slipping into my phone, one after another, like tiny knives. By the next morning, half my family knew. Not the truth. His version. I woke to 12 unread texts. Cousins, an uncle, a family friend from my childhood. All variations of the same theme. He didn't mean it. You know how he gets when he's stressed. Kate feels terrible. This didn't need to go this far. I stared at my phone while Sophie slept against my chest, her tiny fingers curled into the fabric of my shirt, like she was anchoring herself to me. Or maybe anchoring me. Brandon came into the kitchen with coffee, took one look at my face, and sighed. "They're piling on." I nodded. The worst message came from Uncle Kenneth, my dad's older brother. "Juliana, your father raised you, paid for your education, your wedding. Don't destroy the family over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. I typed back slowly, deliberately. He threw a chair at me. I have bruises, photos, witnesses. There was no reply. Instead, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Juliana," my father's voice said, instantly sharp. "What are you doing?" "You're not supposed to be contacting me," I replied, heart pounding. "You went to the police," he said accusingly. "You embarrassed me. You assaulted me." "Stop using that word," he snapped. "It makes me sound like a criminal." Silence stretched between us. "You are a criminal," I said quietly. He laughed, a humorless, disbelieving sound. "You really want to burn everything down, don't you? You did that when you raised the chair." "You provoked me," he insisted. "You humiliated Kate in her own family." "She's not my family." "She is now." "No," I said. "She isn't." His tone hardened. "You're keeping my granddaughter from me." "I'm protecting my daughter from someone who thinks violence is acceptable." "You're overreacting," he said. "This could have been handled privately." "Privately," I repeated. "Like you handled it privately when you lied to everyone?" "Watch your tone," he warned. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just cleanly. "You don't get to threaten me anymore," I said. "Not as my father, not as anything." I hung up and blocked the number. 10 minutes later, a message came through from a different number. "You're making a huge mistake." Brandon saw it over my shoulder. "That's harassment." "I know." That afternoon, Nicole came back over with groceries and a stack of printed screenshots she'd helped me organize. Texts, call logs, photos, timestamps. "He's already violating boundaries," she said, "which means he will absolutely violate a restraining order if you don't have one." "I never wanted it to go this far," I admitted. She looked at me gently. "You didn't take it this far. He did." The next message came from Aunt Patricia again. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to the detective assigned to my case. That night, Brandon and I sat on the couch after Sophie finally fell asleep. The house felt different, smaller, tighter, like the walls were listening. "What if they never forgive me?" I asked. Brandon didn't answer right away. Then, "What if you never forgive yourself for staying silent?" That settled it. The next morning, Detective Rodriguez called. "We'd like to set up a recorded conversation," she said. "Your father has been minimizing what happened. A controlled public meeting might encourage him to speak freely." My stomach dropped. "You want me to meet him?" "In a public place," she clarified. with officers nearby. You'd be wired. If he admits anything or threatens you, we act. I looked at Sophie and her bouncer, kicking happily, oblivious. Okay, I said, I'll do it. The coffee shop was downtown, neutral territory, busy enough to feel safe, quiet enough to hear every word. The days leading up to it were hell. More messages, more pressure. A cousin accused me of using the baby as a weapon. A family friend told me I'd regret destroying my father. Someone even suggested postpartum hormones were making me unstable. That one almost broke me. I cried in the shower that night, shoulders shaking, replaying every second of the incident in my head, wondering for half a shame-filled moment if I really had overreacted. Then I caught sight of the bruise in the mirror. Still there, still ugly, still real. The morning of the meeting, my dad texted from yet another new number. Let's talk like adults. I didn't reply. At the coffee shop, he was already seated when I arrived. Back corner, coffee untouched. He looked tired, but angry tired, not remorseful tired. Juliana, he said, standing, thank you for coming. I'm here to give you one chance to tell the truth, I replied, sitting down. His eyes flicked around the room. You're being dramatic. You raised a chair over your head and threw it at me. It slipped. You were furious. You humiliated Kate. I protected my baby. She's my girlfriend. She was drunk. He slammed his hand on the table, cups rattling. You always push people. My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. So you admit you were angry. He paused. I didn't say that. You said I pushed you, I replied. That means it wasn't an accident. His face flushed. You're twisting my words. I pulled out my phone and slid the photos across the table. The color drained from his face. That's not from the chair, he muttered. It is, I said, and you know it. For a moment, just a moment, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he leaned forward, voice low and venomous. You go forward with this and you're dead to me. You and that baby. My breath caught. Is that a threat? I asked quietly. It's a promise. That was enough. 2 officers approached the table. David Cooper, Detective Rodriguez said, badge visible. We need you to come with us. His eyes snapped to me, wide with fury. You set me up. I gave you a chance, I said. You chose to threaten me. As they led him away, he turned back once more. You'll regret this, he snarled. I didn't look away. For the first time since Sophie was born, I felt something unexpected settle into my chest. Clarity. The moment the officers led my father out of the coffee shop, the noise rushed back in. Steam hissing from the espresso machine. Someone laughing too loudly at a nearby table. A barista calling out an order like nothing monumental had just happened 10 feet away. My hands were shaking so badly I had to press them flat against my thighs. Detective Rodriguez sat across from me once my dad was gone. You did well, she said calmly. He confirmed motive, admitted anger, and issued a direct threat. That recording is extremely strong. I nodded, but my throat felt tight. I wasn't relieved yet, not really. I was bracing for the next wave. It came faster than I expected. By the time Brandon picked me up, my phone was already buzzing again. Different numbers, same messages. How could you do this to your own father? You trapped him. Kate is hysterical. You should be ashamed. One message stood out from my cousin Melissa. If Grandpa were alive, he'd be disgusted with you. That one hurt more than I wanted to admit. At home, Sophie was napping, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily. I stood beside her crib longer than necessary, grounding myself in the quiet rhythm of her breathing. He threatened you, Brandon said firmly behind me. On tape, in public. Anyone who ignores that is choosing denial. I nodded. I know. I just didn't expect it to hurt this much. That night, the detective called again. We're moving forward with charges, she said. Assault in the 2nd degree and criminal threatening. Given the evidence, the DA is confident. My stomach dropped. Even though I'd wanted this, needed this, hearing it out loud made it real. What happens now? I asked. He'll be arraigned within 48 hours. We'll request a no-contact order immediately. When I hung up, Brandon wrapped his arms around me. You're safe, he murmured. We're safe. But safety didn't feel settled yet. not with my father's voice still echoing in my head. The next few days blurred together. Court paperwork, calls with the prosecutor, more messages from family, some pleading, some furious, some dripping with fake concern. My dad violated the no-contact order less than 12 hours after it was issued. A voicemail from a blocked number slipped through. "You think you've won," his voice snarled. "You haven't. Everyone sees what kind of person you are now." I forwarded it immediately. "That's his second violation," Detective Rodriguez said later. "He's digging his own hole." Kate tried too. A long email from an unfamiliar address landed in my inbox. I never wanted this to happen. I was just trying to bond with Sophie. "You embarrassed me in front of David. You pushed him. If you drop the charges, I'll forgive you." I stared at the screen, stunned. "She'll forgive me," I repeated aloud, disbelief sharpening into anger. Nicole, who'd come over again, scoffed. "The audacity is almost impressive." I didn't reply. Instead, I printed it and added it to the growing folder labeled Evidence. The arraignment was brief. My father stood stiffly beside his lawyer, eyes straight ahead. He didn't look at me once. The judge granted the no-contact order immediately. "Any further attempts to contact the victim," she said sharply, "will result in additional charges." Outside the courtroom, my aunt tried to corner me. "You didn't have to do this publicly," she hissed. "He did," I replied calmly. "When he threw a chair at me." She opened her mouth, then closed it, turned away. That night, for the first time since the incident, I slept for more than 3 hours straight. The nightmares didn't stop completely, but they changed. Instead of the chair hitting me, I dreamed it was Sophie, and every time I woke up shaking, but resolved. The prosecutor called a week later. "The recording from the coffee shop sealed it," she said. His lawyer tried to argue provocation. It didn't land. "What about grandparent rights?" Brandon asked from across the table. The prosecutor's tone hardened. "There's no chance. Not with a violent assault charge and recorded threats toward the child." I closed my eyes, relief finally breaking through. More violations followed. A text. A missed call. A message sent through a mutual acquaintance. Each one documented. Each one forwarded. "He still thinks he can scare you into backing down," Nicole said. "That's who he is." My mom came to stay with us during that time. She watched Sophie so I could attend meetings. She cooked. She listened. One night, as we folded laundry together, she said quietly, "I wish I'd had your courage when I was married to him." I looked at her, startled. "I stayed too long," she continued. "I told myself it wasn't that bad, that he didn't mean it. I don't want Sophie growing up learning that lesson." Neither did I. By the time the court date for sentencing approached, my father had violated the no-contact order 3 times. The judge wasn't amused. On the morning of sentencing, I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my blouse, my shoulder still faintly discolored. "You don't have to give a victim impact statement," Brandon reminded me gently. "I know," I said, "but I want to." I wanted the court to hear what it felt like to have your own father choose rage over reason, a girlfriend over his granddaughter, control over love. As we walked into the courthouse, Sophie slept peacefully in her stroller. She wouldn't remember any of this, but I would, and I was done carrying it alone. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not physically, though the air conditioning hummed relentlessly, but emotionally. Sterile, unforgiving. The kind of place where stories were stripped of excuses and reduced to facts. I stood at the podium with my victim impact statement folded neatly in my hands, my heart pounding so hard I was certain everyone could hear it. Brandon sat behind me, one hand resting on Sophie's stroller handle. My mom was beside him, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. My father sat at the defense table. He looked smaller than I remembered, older. His shoulders were slumped, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed stubbornly on the surface of the table. He hadn't looked at me once since entering the room. The judge nodded to me. "You may begin." I took a breath. My voice trembled at first, then steadied. I want the court to understand that this wasn't just a chair. It was the moment I realized that the man who raised me valued control more than my safety. that my boundaries, even as a mother, meant nothing to him. I described the impact, the physical pain, the fear, the nightmares, how I flinched every time someone raised their voice, how I replayed the moment over and over, imagining Sophie in my arms instead of in her crib. That thought, I said, my throat tightening, is something I will carry for the rest of my life. My father's lawyer stood afterward and tried to frame it as a lapse in judgment. Stress, alcohol in the room, a one-time mistake. I watched the judge's expression remain unchanged. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but firm. She glanced down at her notes. You have shown no genuine remorse, only self-pity. My father looked up then, shock written plainly across his face. I am sentencing you to 20 months in county jail, followed by 3 years of probation. You are to have no contact whatsoever with Juliana Cooper Williams or her family. Any violation will result in additional charges. The sound of the gavel echoed sharply. As the bailiff moved toward him, my father finally turned and looked at me. Pure disbelief, anger, something close to fear. I didn't look away. As he was led out in handcuffs, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy, not revenge, relief. Outside the courthouse, the sunlight felt warmer than it should have. How do you feel? My mom asked softly. I searched for the right word. Free, I said, surprising myself. I feel free. Brandon smiled, pulling me into his side. He can't hurt us anymore. Later that afternoon, the prosecutor called to update us on one final detail. Your father's attorney asked about grandparent visitation rights, she said bluntly. The judge denied it outright. There will be no contact, now or in the future. I sat down slowly, my legs suddenly weak. Sophie was legally protected. That night, Nicole video called, her face filling the screen. So, she said, it's finally over. It is, I replied. She grinned. You did something a lot of people never have the courage to do. I didn't feel brave, I admitted. I felt terrified. That's usually how bravery works, she said. Not everyone accepted the outcome. Some family members stopped speaking to me entirely. Others sent passive-aggressive messages about forgiveness and blood being thicker than water. I let them go. My father tried one last time, from a new number, despite the no-contact order. I hope you're happy. Sophie will grow up knowing you kept her from her grandfather. That's on you. I forwarded it immediately. That's his 4th violation, Detective Rodriguez said later. It will be added to his file. I blocked the number without replying. You know what the saddest part is? I said to my mom one evening as I rocked Sophie. Part of me wanted him to actually apologize, to admit what he did was wrong. She sighed softly. Your father has never been able to do that. Not in 43 years. Accountability was always someone else's job. As weeks passed, the tension in my body slowly eased. The nightmares faded. The bruise disappeared. What remained was clarity. I didn't lose a father that day. I lost the illusion that he was safe. And in exchange, I gained something far more important. Peace. One afternoon, I watched Sophie sleeping in her stroller, sunlight dappling her cheeks. Her world was small, simple, safe. She would grow up knowing her mother protected her. That was enough. That was everything. Now I want to ask you, have you ever had to cut off a family member for your own safety? Or your child's? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more real stories about boundaries, courage, and choosing yourself.